So I was just reading a fantastic study, and I'll put it up here, but I find it fascinating because what it was talking about is that, of course, when we use antibiotics, of course, we know that they're going to be quite disastrous to our gut. But of course, in some situations, we require them in order to eradicate a certain nasty bug that might be within our gut. But of course, once we use them, usually they're very broad spectrum and they will just kill out all the bacteria. And this leaves us a bit more susceptible to overgrowth of any yucky ones like C. diff that are able to then get into our gut. They're able to then proliferate because there's no good bacteria in there to be able to fight them off, essentially. And we know that in this space as well, it's tricky talking about the microbiota because we know that somebody that's consuming a highly meat-based diet is going to have a different microbiota to somebody who eats a very plant-based diet. Does this mean if there's different bacteria that one is healthier than the other? Not necessarily. There's a lot of nuances here. But what's really interesting is that there does tend to be some commensal bacteria that are more associated with better health. And what we know about those commensal bacteria is that they tend to be anaerobes. So that means that they exist more happily in an environment with lacking oxygen, essentially. And so how this happens is, and why they like this, is because the cells of our gut will be able to take in certain things like butyrate and use it as energy. Butyrate is a short chain fatty acid or a ketone body, essentially. And that they can take in that butyrate and they can use it to make energy. And from that, we're actually utilizing the oxygen. In order to make ATP, energy, from the butyrate, we need to be able to consume oxygen. So this means that there's less oxygen around in the environment for other microbes to proliferate, because we know that there are other microbes who are aerobic bacteria. That means that they really like the existence of oxygen. So if we are in a state in our gut where there is a huge amount of oxygen, then it's likely that this will be able to facilitate the existence of microbes that really like an oxygen environment. Whereas if there is low oxygen in our gut, then the commensal bacteria that we know are anaerobes, and we know that they are more associated with better health outcomes, they're able to proliferate. So that's really, really interesting. What we do know is that antibiotics tend to not only kill off all bacteria and leaving the environment more open to nasty bacteria coming in. We also know that antibiotics can create a situation in which there is more oxygen available in the environment. And so remember how I said that some microbes, and in fact ones that are considered a little bit more nasty, tend to be able to proliferate more in an oxygen-rich environment. So if we are using antibiotics and providing an oxygen environment, these are more likely to overgrow. And the ones that are commensal, that we know are more associated with good health, aren't really able to proliferate, because remember, they prefer the environment that is an anaerobic state. There's not a lot of oxygen. I hope that makes sense. But what's really, really interesting is if we provide a situation in which there is a lot of butyrate, that butyrate is able to be used by our endothelial cells, and they're able to use it to make energy. We know that we can take butyrate in and it can be sent through the electron transport chain, and the final electron carrier is oxygen. That means that if we have a lot of butyrate being used as energy by those cells, we're actually going to create a situation where there's less oxygen because it's being utilized in this energy production pathway when we metabolize butyrate. So the key to this is we do want to have access to butyrate in our cells within our gut. So what we can do, and what has been known for a long time, is that if we consume fibrous foods, we're able to use those and produce a lot of butyrate. Does this mean that you need to eat a lot of fiber to create butyrate in your gut? Well, you can do it that way. But we also know that being in a ketogenic state will also produce a lot of butyrate systemically. So I just find this really interesting. As you can see, if you want to support the microbiome that is more associated with good health and allowing the anaerobic microbes to be able to proliferate more, we need to be able to create a state of low oxygen availability, and that would be providing butyrate. So you can either do that through fiber consumption, or you can do that through being in ketosis often, which allows for the production of butyrate. I hope that makes sense.